You're scrolling through your feed, double-tapping posts from your favorite influencer. She's responding to your comments, posting stories, engaging with her followers like she always does. Everything seems perfectly normal. But what if I told you that behind every single one of those posts, every response, every heart emoji, there was nothing but death? This is the story that will make you question every online interaction you've ever had. It's about a week in July 2022 when thousands of people thought they were connecting with Anastasia Grishman, a vibrant 26-year-old Russian influencer who had built her empire on confidence, beauty, and authenticity. But they weren't talking to Anastasia at all. They were talking to her killer. And he had been wearing her digital mask for 7 entire days, while her body lay decomposing in a bathtub just feet away from where he typed her responses. What happened to Anastasia Grishman isn't just a murder case. It's a digital nightmare that exposes how easily our online lives can be stolen, manipulated, and used to deceive the people who care about us most. This case will haunt you long after you finish watching because it forces us to confront a terrifying question. How do we know the person we're talking to online is really them? Anastasia Grishman was everything you'd expect from a successful 2022 influencer. With over 300,000 TikTok followers and millions of views, she had mastered the art of being unapologetically herself. Her content was bold, her personality magnetic, and her confidence absolutely infectious. She wasn't just another pretty face. In the endless scroll, she was a creator, a businesswoman, and a force to be reckoned with. But Anastasia was so much more than her online presence. She was a talented tattoo artist, creating intricate designs that were as beautiful and bold as she was. Her artistic skills translated perfectly to her social media content, where she showcased not just her finished work, but her creative process. She had successfully monetized her creativity across multiple platforms, including OnlyFans, where she built a substantial following and income stream. Living in St. Petersburg, Russia, Anastasia seemed to have cracked the code of digital success. She was financially independent, creatively fulfilled, and had built a community of followers who genuinely cared about her. Her posts radiated confidence and control. She appeared to be living life entirely on her own terms. But sharing her life was Dmitry Komlovsky, a 24-year-old man who sometimes appeared in her content. To the outside world, they looked like a modern couple navigating the digital age together. He was her boyfriend, later husband, and occasional collaborator in her adult content. But behind the carefully curated posts and couple photos, something sinister was brewing. Those who knew them personally later described troubling signs that her online audience never saw. Dmitry was intensely jealous of Anastasia's success and independence. While she flourished in the spotlight, building her brand and connecting with thousands of fans, he seemed to resent the very qualities that made her special. Her confidence, her business acumen, her ability to captivate an audience, all of it triggered something dark in him. The relationship that looked picture-perfect on Instagram was actually a powder keg of jealousy, control, and escalating violence. Dmitry, who was also known by the alias Dmitry Chernyshov, was described as jealous of his girlfriend's online success. But none of Anastasia's hundreds of thousands of followers could see the warning signs hidden behind the glossy veneer of social media perfection. It was late July 2022 when Anastasia's friends first noticed something was off. Not dramatically wrong, not obviously alarming, just different. Her usual vibrant energy seemed muted. Her responses to messages felt shorter, less warm. But in our hyper-connected world, we're used to people having off days, right? We tell ourselves they're just busy, tired, or dealing with personal stuff. But Anastasia's closest friends knew her. Better than that, they knew her voice, her humor, her way of communicating. And what they were receiving felt like an echo of the woman they loved, recognizable, but somehow hollow. The texts were the first red flag. Friends later described how Anastasia's messages felt stilted and strange. She was responding, yes, but not in her usual voice. The warmth was gone. The personality that made her so magnetic online seemed to have evaporated from her private communications too. When they tried to call, she wouldn't answer. When they suggested meeting up, there was always an excuse. Video calls, she was too tired or not feeling well. For someone who lived her life so publicly, who shared so much of herself with the world, this sudden withdrawal felt deeply wrong. Days passed, then a week, and while Anastasia's social media accounts remained active, posts appeared, stories were uploaded, comments were liked. Her friends felt like they were watching a stranger perform in Anastasia's life. The content was there, but the soul behind it seemed to have vanished. Her friends hadn't heard from her in a week, and their concern was turning into panic. This wasn't like the Anastasia they knew. She was always present, always connected, always there for the people she cared about. Even when she was busy with work or content creation, she made time for her relationships. Finally, they did what any concerned friends would do in 2022. They called the police. Something was seriously wrong with Anastasia Grishman, and they needed help finding out what it was. What they discovered would shatter their understanding of digital authenticity forever. While Anastasia's friends were frantically trying to reach her, the most horrifying masquerade was playing out across every platform she'd built her life on. For over a week after the murder, Kamlovsky deceitfully managed Anastasia's online interactions, responding to messages from her concerned friends and followers. Think about the psychological coldness required for this deception. After killing the OnlyFans model, Kamlovsky then threw Anastasia's body in the bathtub, took her phone, and ran her social media profiles for a week, pretending he was her. While her body was decomposing in their bathroom, Dmitry was sitting in the next room, crafting posts in her voice, responding to her friends' worried messages, maintaining the illusion that she was alive and well. The deception was both simple and sophisticated. He had access to all her accounts, knew her passwords, understood her posting patterns. To most of her followers, nothing seemed amiss. The algorithm kept serving up Anastasia's content. Her account stayed active. Her digital life continued seamlessly, even as her real life had been brutally ended. But Dmitry wasn't just maintaining her accounts. He was actively engaging with her most intimate relationships. He also answered texts from her girlfriends, participating in conversations about weekend plans, responding to inside jokes, even offering comfort to friends who were going through their own problems. He was using their love and concern for Anastasia as part of his cover-up. The most chilling part, he was good at it. For 7 full days, he successfully fooled thousands of people. He studied her voice, her communication style, her typical responses. He knew her well enough to maintain the illusion convincingly. But he couldn't capture her essence, the warmth, the authenticity, the spark that made Anastasia special. Her closest friends picked up on the subtle changes, the responses that felt just slightly off, the missing warmth in her messages, the way she seemed to avoid deeper conversations or personal topics. They sensed something was wrong, but they never could have imagined the truth. They weren't talking to Anastasia at all. They were talking to her killer. Every worried message from a friend became an opportunity for Dmitry to further his deception. Every expression of concern became a chance to practice his grotesque performance. He was weaponizing their love for Anastasia against them, making them unwilling participants in his cover-up. The investigation that followed the missing person report, filed by Anastasia's friends, would expose one of the most disturbing digital deceptions in recent memory. When police arrived at the St. Petersburg apartment she shared with Dmitry, They found a scene that contradicted everything her social media presence had suggested. Anastasia Grishman, 26, was discovered in her St. Petersburg flat, found dead in her bath covered in stab wounds. The model was found dead in her bath on August 10, 2022, after last being seen the month before, stabbed at least 22 times. The vibrant woman who had been posting just hours before was discovered in their bathtub, the victim of a frenzied, brutal attack. The forensic evidence painted a horrifying picture. The horrendous act, which involved stabbing Grishman, 26, at least 22 times, took place in their St. Petersburg apartment in late July 2022. This wasn't a crime of passion or a single moment of rage. It was sustained, calculated violence that spoke to deep-seated hatred and jealousy. But the physical evidence was only part of the story. The digital evidence was equally damning and far more psychologically disturbing. Phone records, IP addresses, and platform analytics all confirmed what investigators suspected. Someone else had been using Anastasia's accounts for the entire week leading up to the discovery of her body. The St. Petersburg court heard unsettling details of the crime, revealing that Kamlovsky, also known by the alias Dmitry Chernyshov, gruesomely dismembered Anastasia's body and attempted to conceal her death by impersonating her on social media. The level of premeditation and calculation was staggering. This wasn't just murder, it was identity theft on the most intimate level possible. When confronted with the evidence, Dmitry's elaborate digital performance crumbled quickly. According to local media in Russia, Dmitry was filmed being taken into custody and was later charged with murder after reportedly confessing to the crime. The man who had spent a week successfully fooling thousands of people online couldn't maintain his lies when faced with physical evidence and professional interrogation. The confession revealed the calculated nature of both the murder and the cover-up. This wasn't a spontaneous act of violence followed by panic. It was a planned execution followed by a sophisticated deception designed to buy time and throw off suspicion. The revelation of Anastasia's murder and Dmitry's week-long impersonation sent shockwaves through her online communities and far beyond. The case became a viral sensation, but not in the way Anastasia had built her career. This was the kind of virality that comes from collective horror and disbelief. Followers who had been interacting with her posts during those final days felt violated and manipulated. Comment sections filled with people expressing horror at realizing they had been unknowingly engaging with her killer. Some had sent supportive messages during her difficult time. Others had shared personal problems, seeking her advice. All of them had been talking to the man who murdered her. The case highlighted disturbing questions about our digital age that most people had never considered. How many of our online interactions are authentic? When someone's posting pattern changes slightly, should we be concerned? How easily can our digital selves be stolen and manipulated after we're gone? For Anastasia's friends and family, the betrayal was multi-layered. Not only had they lost her to violence, but their final memories of her had been contaminated by her killer's performance. The last conversations they thought they'd had with her were actually conversations with her murderer. Their grief was complicated by the knowledge that they had been unknowingly interacting with the person who took her life. The influencer community, particularly those in the adult content space, grappled with new fears about safety and digital security. If someone could so easily take over another person's entire online presence, what protections existed? The case sparked conversations about digital estate planning, account security, and the unique vulnerabilities faced by content creators. Social media platforms were forced to confront uncomfortable questions about verification and authentication. While they had systems to prevent unauthorized access, they had no mechanisms to detect when authorized accounts were being used by the wrong person. The case exposed a fundamental vulnerability in our digital infrastructure, the assumption that whoever has access to an account is the rightful owner. In January 2024, the court imposed a sentence of imprisonment for a period of 8 years. In a high-security penal colony, many felt the sentence was insufficient for the calculated nature of both the killing and the elaborate psychological torture inflicted on her followers and friends. Today, Anastasia Grishman's case continues to haunt everyone who learns about it. It's not just the brutality of her murder that disturbs people, it's the violation of digital trust, the corruption of her memory, and the realization of how vulnerable we all are in our hyper-connected world. The case has become a cautionary tale shared in digital safety courses, domestic violence awareness programs, and social media literacy education. Law enforcement agencies study it to understand the intersection of physical and digital crime scenes. It's referenced in discussions about platform responsibility and user verification. But beyond its educational value, Anastasia's story serves as a reminder of the human cost of our digital age's vulnerabilities. Behind every profile, every post, every online interaction is a real person with real relationships, real dreams, and real dangers. The case forces us to confront the duality of our online lives, how they can be both empowering and incredibly vulnerable. The most chilling aspect of this case isn't just that Dmitry killed Anastasia, it's that he then used her voice to lie to everyone who cared about her. He weaponized their love for her against them. He made her friends unwilling participants in his deception. He corrupted the very connections that made her life meaningful. The case also reveals something deeply disturbing about domestic violence in the digital age. The court in St. Petersburg has determined that the crime occurred after several family disputes, suggesting a pattern of escalating conflict. Dmitry's jealousy of Anastasia's success and independence ultimately led to the ultimate act of control, taking her life and then stealing her identity. In the end, what haunts people most about Anastasia Grishman's case isn't just the murder, it's the week that followed. It's the knowledge that while her friends were worried about her, while her followers were engaging with her content, while people who loved her were hoping she was okay, she was already gone. And the person they thought they were talking to was the very person who had taken her from them. The case leaves us with questions that have no easy answers. In our hyper-connected world, how do we protect not just our physical safety, but our digital souls? How do we ensure that our online presence remains authentically ours? And when the people we love go quiet online, how do we know when silence is just silence, and when it's something far more sinister? One of Anastasia's friends, reflecting on the case months later, captured the lasting trauma of the deception. "We thought we were checking on her, making sure she was okay. We thought we were being good friends. But we were actually talking to her killer. He was using our love for her as part of his lie. How do you recover from that? How do you ever trust a text message again?" That question haunts everyone who learns about this case. In an age when our lives are increasingly lived through screens, when our relationships are maintained through apps, when our identities are built on platforms, how do we know what's real? How do we protect ourselves from the kind of digital deception that can turn our love into a weapon against us? The next time someone's messages feel a little off, the next time a friend's post seems slightly strange, the next time that voice on the other end doesn't quite sound right, remember Anastasia Grishman. Remember that sometimes the most terrifying thing about our digital age isn't what we can see through our screens, it's what we can't see at all, and sometimes the silence is the only thing that's real.